Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas. I'm Molly Gambhir. Let's get started.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda Superb, best in next class. Co-powered by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
The Indian Prime Minister has spoken to the US President-elect. It is a phone conversation that reveals a lot. It is a tacit acknowledgement of Joe Biden's victory in the US presidential election, coming at a time when the transition tussle continues in America. The discussion between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President-elect Joe Biden involved three core issues. It also sets the foundation for the future US-India partnership and gives us a sense of what the Biden-Modi equation will look like. On Gravitas tonight, we tell you what the two leaders discussed. We look at the agenda for this cooperation and the challenges that lie ahead. We also tell you how Joe Biden has stood up for India over the last few years and been a steady ally for New Delhi. I'm Molly Gambhir. Also on the show for you tonight, Thailand's protest movement against the monarchy intensifies. Demonstrators want constitutional reforms and the resignation of the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. We get you the latest from on the ground. Vladimir Putin was already president for life. He now wants to be a president above the law. We tell you how and why Russia is planning to grant the leader immunity from prosecution. China is back to doing what it does best, peddling fake news stories. This time, it has lied about the use of microwave weapons in Ladakh. We tell you what's cooking. The New Zealand police sets an example, introduces the hijab as a part of its police uniform, but reignites an age-old debate. It is a Gravitas special report. But first, as always, Gravitas Global Headlines.
Taiwan has refused to renew the license of a news channel widely seen as pro-China, effectively shutting it down, citing evidence of interference from a Beijing-friendly tycoon amid fears over China's campaign to win support over the island. Iran's foreign minister has said that it will automatically return to its nuclear commitments if US President-elect Joe Biden lifts sanctions imposed over the past 2 years by President Donald Trump's administration in a tactic to maximize pressure and isolate it globally. Israeli military has launched airstrikes in Syria, killing 10 fighters. Israel claims the attack was provoked after its troops uncovered roadside bombs in the Golan Heights, which were allegedly planted by an Iran-backed Syrian squad. After being served a notice by Indian government over displaying Indian Union territory of Ladakh as a part of China, microblogging platform Twitter has issued a written apology for hurting Indian sentiments and has sworn to correct the error by November 30th. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has unveiled a 6-month action plan designed to ensure his country's democratic stability. Pashinyan has rejected calls from opponents and protesters to resign over what they say was his disastrous handling of the weeks-long conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh. A research shows that the 3 largest glaciers in Greenland, which holds enough frozen water to lift global sea levels some 1.3 meters, could melt faster than even the worst-case warming predictions. Until 2000, the main driver of sea level rise was melting glaciers and the expansion of ocean waters as it warms. But over the last 2 decades, the world's ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica have become the single largest source of sea level rise. Amid a surge in coronavirus cases termed very serious by Chancellor Angela Merkel, thousands of people gathered in Berlin to protest against government measures to curb the spread of coronavirus. Germany has reported nearly 300,000 new coronavirus cases since the beginning of this month. A program to slaughter up to 70,000 poultry is being prepared after bird flu has been found on another chicken farm in Germany. Type H5N8 bird flu was confirmed in a farm near Rostock in the eastern state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Germany have vowed to stick with their manager Joachim Low, despite a humiliating 6-0 defeat to Spain in the UEFA Nations League last night. The Germans only needed a draw to progress to the semi-finals, but capitulated in Seville with Manchester City's Spanish star Ferran Torres grabbing a hat-trick. This is Germany's worst ever competitive defeat, and their worst in all football since 1931. US Open champion Dominic Thiem is the first man through to the semis in the ATP Tour Finals after edging past world number 2 Rafael Nadal. The Austrian saved 2 set points before winning the opening set in a tiebreak, and then rallied from a breakdown to edge the second in a shootout as well. Nadal will now battle defending champion Stefanos Tsitsipas for the second semi-final spot from this group.
In the United States of America, Donald Trump may not be willing to concede yet, but India is ready to engage with the incoming Joe Biden administration. 2 tweets confirm this. They are from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He spoke to the US President-elect Joe Biden and conveyed his congratulations. Prime Minister Modi congratulated Kamala Harris as well. He says her victory is a matter of great pride and inspiration for Indian Americans. The outreach and the message are revealing. With this phone call, Prime Minister Modi and Joe Biden have set the foundation for the future of India-US ties. Tonight on Gravitas, we tell you what is on agenda. Let me start here with a statement. It is from India's Ministry of External Affairs. This is about that phone call between Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi. The statement says a lot. We will tell you the details, but right now I want you to focus on the first line. It refers to Joe Biden as the president-elect. Now, this is an acknowledgement from the government of India, an acceptance of the result, one that Donald Trump has contested. But in New Delhi's view, there is no doubt Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States of America. So a congratulatory call was in order. What did the leaders discuss? 3 items are at the top of the agenda. Number 1, the Wuhan virus pandemic and access to affordable vaccines. Number 2, tackling climate change. Number 3, cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. What does this list of priorities indicate? Is Team Biden setting a new agenda, or is it more of the same? Actually, it is a bit of both. Out of these 3 issues, 2 are areas of continuity from the Trump administration: the pandemic and the Indo-Pacific. While climate change is an old favorite of the Democrats, Biden's transition team put out a statement as well. It says the president-elect looks forward to working with Prime Minister Modi on shared global challenges, which includes defending the world against future health crises and launching global economic recovery. Joe Biden also wants to work with the Indian Prime Minister to strengthen democracy at home and abroad. Now, out of all the issues, the Indo-Pacific is perhaps the biggest challenge before both the leaders. Securing the Indo-Pacific is central to the strategy to contain China. During campaigning, Joe Biden took a harder stand against Beijing. He called out China for curtailing democratic freedoms in Hong Kong. He slammed China for the persecution of Muslims in Xinjiang. Biden said the Communist Party's policies towards Xinjiang are unconscionable. Joe Biden has also called China's President Xi Jinping a thug. So one can expect him to take a harder line against China when it comes to the Indo-Pacific. It shouldn't take much for both leaders, Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi, to establish a rapport. given that they have engaged on several occasions before. Prime Minister Modi met with Biden during his official visits to America in 2014 as well as 2016. Joe Biden had chaired the joint session of the US Congress that was addressed by Prime Minister Modi in 2016. New Delhi seems to have completed its groundwork to work with the Biden administration. Earlier this week, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar expressed confidence in the future of the India-US ties. He said, Joe Biden is not a stranger to India. Here's a quote. As Vice President, we dealt with him. I happened to be the ambassador during the last phase of the Obama administration. We had known him earlier when he was in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as the ranking Democratic member and then as the chairman. Joe Biden is very much part of this period when Indo-American relations underwent a radical transformation, which I reasonably date back to Clinton's visit. So, for India, Joe Biden is not a stranger. As America's vice president, and even before that, Joe Biden has engaged with the Indian establishment on more occasions than one, committing his support for a strong India-US partnership. Our next report tells you how Joe Biden has been a steady ally for India in America.
September 2014. There was a buzz in Washington, D.C. The Indian Prime Minister was visiting America's capital right after his thumping victory in the general election. While the focus of the world was on the talks between Barack Obama and Narendra Modi, on the 30th of September, Joe Biden, the then Vice President of America, hosted a lunch for the Indian Prime Minister. Obama's Secretary of State, John Kerry, was present too. The leaders had spent time together before the luncheon. They were convinced India and the United States can become strong partners.
Mr. Prime Minister, our conversations these past 2 days leave me with absolute confidence that we can cross the sea together. And we are encouraged, all of us who have been in contact with you these last couple days, with your sense of purpose, with your incredible energy, and with your commitment to this relationship. The floor is yours.
Prime Minister Modi agreed. He had nothing but praise for the American leadership.
There are very few people who take difficult paths and undertake different journeys, and both these leaders have always undertaken difficult journeys wherever there have been problems, and they have risen beyond politics, and they have tried to deal with those problems and solve with those problems, and they have worked very hard for these.
With Joe Biden now getting ready to take charge as president, Prime Minister Modi would find a familiar face and a dependable ally in the Oval Office. Because in his 40-year-long career in politics, Joe Biden has extended his support to India on more than one occasion. In 1998, when India conducted its first nuclear test, Biden issued a statement of support in his capacity as a ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Back then, when the US was opposed to India's nuclear tests, Biden had said, "A nation of India's size, importance and stature cannot be isolated forever. We will have to engage India." 3 years later, Biden stood up in India's support again, now as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Biden wrote a letter to the then President George W. Bush, calling on his administration to lift the sanctions on India. Biden wrote, "The economic sanctions against India serve to stigmatize rather than stabilize. If the sanctions are removed, India will respond with reciprocal acts of goodwill in non-proliferation and other arenas." Biden's support to India didn't waver when Obama was elected President of America. As Vice President-elect, he traveled to Pakistan with a demand. Biden wanted Islamabad to help India bring the culprits behind the 26/11 terrorist attack to justice. As these pictures from September 2014 show, nothing changed when Prime Minister Modi rose to power. Instead, India had deepened its partnership with America. In 2016, the Obama-Biden administration declared India a major defense partner, a distinctly unique definition that the US had not used before for any other ally. With Prime Minister Modi still at the helm of affairs in New Delhi, the Biden administration will get a chance to build on the same foundation. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
It has been 15 days since Americans cast their votes, 10 days since the election was called in favor of Joe Biden. But forget about transition of power, there is utter chaos in the United States. After firing Defense Secretary Mark Esper, US President Donald Trump has now fired America's top cybersecurity official, Christopher Krebs. He also announced the pulling out of more troops from Afghanistan. Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was lambasted in a Pennsylvania court. The president himself was slammed by the former First Lady Michelle Obama. What about the president-elect? Joe Biden's transition is in a limbo. We will tell you all about this and more over the next 5 minutes. Let's start with what happened with the US cybersecurity chief. Christopher Krebs was fired on Twitter. He was the head of the CISA, or the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It is the same federal agency that vouched for the reliability of the 2020 election. Krebs oversaw the protection of federal computer networks ahead of that election. In tweets posted on the 18th of November, Donald Trump claimed that the recent statement issued by Krebs on the security of the 2020 polls was, quote-unquote, highly inaccurate. Donald Trump went on to claim that there was massive fraud during the polling, something that he has repeated time and again, and that poll watchers were not allowed into polling locations. Donald Trump goes on to say, and I'm quoting, effective immediately, Chris Krebs has been terminated as the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Here's something else that was announced over the last 24 hours. The United States will be reducing the number of its troops in Afghanistan. Donald Trump plans to pull out more troops before he leaves office. The announcement was made by America's acting defense secretary, Christopher Miller, who was installed last week after Donald Trump had fired Mark Esper.
In light of these tremendous sacrifices, and with great humility and gratitude to those who came before us, I am formally announcing that we will implement President Trump's orders to continue our repositioning of forces from those two countries. By January 15th, 2001, I clearly am thinking of where this started in 2001. By January 15th, 2021, our forces, their size in Afghanistan will be 2,500 troops. Our force size in Iraq will also be 2,500 by that same date.
If you recall, on this very show, we had told you that there is a high possibility of Donald Trump pulling out troops from the war zones during his lame duck period in the White House. The president is exercising every possible power at his disposal. Now, the question is, will the move undermine peace talks with the Taliban? WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik is in Kabul. He sent us this report. Take a look.
Here in Afghanistan, the officials are warning about the increase in violence. Remember, the US started withdrawing troops from Afghanistan after it inked the deal with the Taliban, where it had committed of withdrawing troops from Afghanistan itself. But there has recently been a sharp increase in violence. Amidst this, the Pentagon's decision to reduce another 2,500 troops and bring down their presence to 2,500 can relatively result in further escalation of violence within the country. There are also talks about the Taliban's link with the Al-Qaeda. Remember, that very link is the reason which has triggered this war to begin with in 2001.
In the deal between the US and the Taliban, Washington agreed to withdraw all US forces from Afghanistan by May 2021, given that the Taliban fulfills Washington's conditions. And as of today, the Taliban has not fulfilled those conditions. Taking it forward from where Anas had left, even Trump's staunch supporters believe that withdrawing considerable number of troops from Afghanistan is a mistake. By the way, a mistake is what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell also called the plan. The head of NATO has warned of a quote-unquote very high price. The move also creates a significant hurdle for the Biden presidency, which wants to place the Taliban under greater scrutiny. But this is one of the many ways in which Donald Trump is hammering Biden's plan and planting nails on his path to the White House. Transitions can be prickly affairs, but this is taking things to a whole new level. And we are not done yet. Trump's lawyers are not done moving the courts. They want to continue the legal fight. The president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was at a court in Pennsylvania on the 17th of November. Giuliani was accusing the Democrats of stealing the election. He submitted no evidence to back his claim. But he demanded that Joe Biden should not be certified as the winner. Why? Because Giuliani claimed that observers did not have access to Allegheny and Philadelphia. Republican observers did not have access, according to him. You must listen to what the federal judge told Giuliani. I'm quoting now. You are asking this court to invalidate more than 6.8 million voters, thereby disenfranchising every single voter in the Commonwealth. Could you tell me how the result could possibly be justified? The president himself was slammed by former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, for creating unnecessary hurdles in the transition process. In an Instagram post, Michelle Obama spoke about the time when Hillary Clinton had lost to Donald Trump in 2016 and the Obama White House had to hand over the baton to Trump's team. The former First Lady wrote, Donald Trump had spread racist lies about my husband and has put my family in danger. That was not something I was ready to forgive. But I knew that for the sake of our country, I have to find the strength and the maturity to put my anger aside. That's a strong statement from Michelle Obama. She adds, the American people had spoken, and one of the great responsibilities of the presidency is to listen when they do. Like I mentioned, it's been 10 days since Joe Biden was declared the incumbent president of the United States, but the sitting president is yet to acknowledge this mandate. Donald Trump has made no congratulatory phone calls to Joe Biden. He has not delivered any concession speech. Trump's team has not initiated any transition process, and as a result, Joe Biden's team has not been able to get access to the mandatory transition fund or even office space. Joe Biden is supposed to be sitting on the helm of American affairs in just about 2 months from now, but he has not been getting any security briefing, something that an incumbent president is entitled to. Let's now talk about Pakistan. For far too long, Pakistan has been whipping up anti-France rhetoric. Pakistani lawmakers have been criticizing French secularism. Pakistani citizens have decided to boycott French products. And bowing down to hardliners who took over the streets in Pakistan, the Pakistani leadership is preparing to expel the French ambassador. Now, all this while, France chose to remain quiet. It chose to ignore Pakistan's belligerence. But it has now decided to hit Islamabad where it hurts the most. And it's not alone in doing so. France has the support of the whole of Europe. Let's tell you what's happening. A number of European parliamentarians have raised concerns over the European Union's financial support to Pakistan. They say the support has continued despite Islamabad's lack of efforts towards tackling terror and hence must be stopped. Remember, Pakistan continues to receive European aid despite being on the FATF grey list since 2018. European parliamentarians have slammed the lack of progress and honesty on Islamabad's part and specifically mentioned the Pakistan government's inaction on global terrorist Hafiz Saeed. Allow me now to quote from their statement. Certain terror organizations are able to thrive openly in Pakistan as the government is ambivalent and issues sentences which do not deter such activities or which are never imposed. This was the case for one of the world's most wanted terrorists, Hafiz Saeed, founder of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, who is included on the UN list of suspected international terrorists. So the European Union is raising questions, but a French lawmaker says just raising questions on Pakistan's inaction may not be enough. He says it is time to impose real financial and trade sanctions against Islamabad. The name of this lawmaker is Jordan Bardella. He is a French member of the European Parliament. Mr. Bardella has expressed concern over terrorism emanating from countries like Turkey and Pakistan. He has stressed that the European Union must impose sanctions in order to make European solidarity tangible. Allow me to quote now. Is the EU planning to adopt any real financial or trade sanctions against countries like Turkey, Pakistan, Kuwait and Qatar in order to reassert our common values and make European solidarity tangible? The European Commission is expected to answer this question in the coming weeks. Until then, let's tell you how dependent Pakistan and Turkey really are on the European Union and why taking on Emmanuel Macron could end up being a big mistake. I'll start with Pakistan. The European Union is Pakistan's biggest trading partner. In 2015, the EU reportedly accounted for 12.8% of Pakistan's total trade and absorbed 23.7% of Pakistan's total exports. Pakistani products are set to enter the EU at a preferential tariff rate. Then we come to aid and assistance. The EU has been instrumental in strengthening Pakistan's social and economic fabric. Just this year, in May 2020, when COVID-19 cases were on the rise in cash-strapped Pakistan, the EU offered an aid package of more than $163 million to Islamabad. $163 million. Such generous relief packages could soon be history if the EU moves ahead with the sanctions. And then we come to Turkey. We've been telling you how the Turkish economy is going through one of its worst periods. The Turkish lira hit a record low against the dollar a few days back. It lost 46% of its dollar value. Turkey is also involved in a number of diplomatic spats with European countries from Greece to Armenia. Turkey is caught up in various degrees of confrontations in Europe. And to add to that, the Turkish president has shown utter disregard for European laws in recent months. Forget about respecting laws. Recep Tayyip Erdogan publicly insults European leaders whenever he gets the chance to do so. And here is how Europe is hitting back. The European Commission has now drawn up a list of potential targets for economic sanctions, which could deal a blow to Turkey's tourism and transport sectors. Remember, Turkey receives payments from the EU budget as pre-accession support. Currently, $4.5 billion have been allocated for the 2014 to 2020 period. The money goes to projects in the energy, education and agricultural sectors. But this aid is set to go if the EU moves ahead with its sanctions against Turkey. So let me say this. Turkey and Pakistan cannot afford to get sanctioned by the European Union. The dependency is enormous. The potential losses are huge. It is time the two countries accept this reality and mend their ways. On to Thailand now, where the standoff between the government and the citizens has gotten worse. The protest took a violent turn yesterday, with the police using water cannons and tear gas to push back the protesters, which led to clashes. Our next report gets you the latest.
Tear gas hung heavy in Bangkok. Water cannons laced with chemicals cut through the smoke, hitting the men and women who are fighting Thailand's monarchy. For several weeks, these protesters have taken to the streets, demanding deep constitutional reform in Thailand. This week, they have become a target of a crackdown. It began on Tuesday, as the protesters tried to march towards the gates of Parliament. The police fired water cannons, even gunshots by some accounts. The protesters scrambled for cover, with some hiding behind rubber ducks to evade the water cannons.
Not sure what they used, tear gas or whatever, but when I breathe in, it stings and burns.
Many people got injured. Many of them are at the ambulance. We are here just to call for democracy. Why do they need to spray us with water? I don't understand.
The crackdown continued into Wednesday. The water cannons are back in action. The cops are denying the use of live fire ammunition. But it seems like they will be relentless in their clampdown. Thailand's Lese Majesty law forbids any insult to the monarchy. It is among the strictest in the world. But the protesters are unafraid. They have rejected the proposals passed in Parliament that call for changes to the constitution without diluting the powers of the king. The protesters have three clear demands. Number one, the resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. Number two, a reform of the monarchy that leads to legal, political and physical oversight. And number three, greater democratic participation.
Government coalition has also introduced a bill to Parliament that would make a reform of the constitution possibly, but they are imagining a very lengthy process that could take months or years until the constitution is actually changed, and I'm not sure if the protesters are willing to give them as much time as they want to have.
The Thai citizens have taken to the streets to challenge the monarchy. For the first time in decades, the people of Thailand are openly defying the authority of the king. The royal palace has remained remarkably silent on the uprising, a silence that is revealing. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Time now for the Gravitas vaccine tracker. The government of India has said that 1 in 5 Indians is likely to be vaccinated by July 2021. Meaning that in the next 8 months, at least 25 crore Indians will be administered the Wuhan virus vaccine. Which vaccine will that be? We do not know that yet. India's Health Minister Harshvardhan has confirmed that Indian states have been asked to prepare a list of priority population groups. In other words, the people who would be getting vaccinated first. According to reports, this list would include frontline healthcare workers like doctors, nurses, paramedics, surveillance officers. Let's look at the vaccines that India has pre-ordered. Novavax's candidate, Oxford AstraZeneca's shot Sputnik 5, which is being developed by Russia's Gamaleya Research Institute. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in fact, has said that he may now start producing Sputnik 5.
BRICS members were able to react quickly and take concrete measures to combat the pandemic. I would like to note that the Russian Direct Investment Fund has concluded agreements with Indian and Brazilian partners to conduct clinical trials of the Sputnik 5 vaccine, as well as with pharmaceutical companies in China and India to open centers for the production of our vaccine in these countries, not only for their own needs, but also for third parties.
India is in talks with Pfizer, which just announced an important revision for its vaccine candidate. The company has said that its vaccine is 95% effective, as opposed to the earlier estimate of 90% efficacy. The revision is based on the final results from Pfizer's late-stage trial. The problem is Pfizer's storing temperature. The shot needs to be stored at -70 to -80 degrees Celsius. This makes not just the storage, but also the distribution of the vaccine doses difficult. India's health minister has said that states have been asked to submit details of the cold chain and related infrastructure required. There are also 5 vaccines that are being tested in India. The Oxford AstraZeneca shot, whose phase 3 trials are being conducted by India's Serum Institute. Biotech's Covaxin is also in phase 3, as is Russia's Sputnik 5. Then there is Zydus Cadella's shot, which has almost completed phase 2 trials, and Biological E's candidate as well. The Russian president is offering vaccines to make the world immune from the coronavirus. But back home, Vladimir Putin is striving for a different kind of immunity from all crimes committed under his watch. He wants to introduce a bill that will protect him from prosecution for all crimes committed during his lifetime. He was already president for life. He now wants to become a president above scrutiny. Our next report explores.
24th June, Moscow. The world witnessed Vladimir Putin's coronation as the Tsar of Russia. The president put up a show of strength ahead of a symbolic referendum on his tenure. The 1st of July. The referendum takes place. Kremlin critics call it a constitutional coup. They say the result would be a foregone conclusion. And it indeed was. The Russian constitution is amended. 68-year-old Putin is allowed to run for 2 more tenures. In other words, he is declared president for life. It's been less than 4 months since this constitutional power grab, and Putin is only pushing for more. The Russian president now wants immunity from prosecution for crimes committed under his watch. And he is once again using constitutional methods to provide a veneer of legitimacy to his ambitions. The lower house of the Russian parliament has passed its first reading of a bill aimed at bringing Putin's dream into law. If passed, the bill would grant protection to former presidents and their families from prosecution for all crimes committed during their lifetime. They will also be exempt from searches, arrests, even questioning. Dmitry Medvedev, who was the head of state until 2012, is Russia's only living former president. And Putin is still in office, set to remain in power till 2036. So why does he need the bill now?
It's not specifically now. In fact, if anything, it's making sure that the groundwork is laid ahead of what could become a very long presidency. He could stay in power for a further 12 more years. And some analysts say he is in effect testing the water to see what he can get away with in terms of these new laws. Can he push through amendments to the Constitution which will allow him to stay in power longer, which will allow him these kind of judicial...
Now, a president above the law. 68-year-old Putin may not view himself as immortal, but he definitely wants to ensure that he is indispensable. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
China is at it again. It is spreading fake news. A Chinese professor has now claimed that China apparently used microwave oven weapons on the Indian troops in Ladakh. Why is China lying to the world again? And what exactly is a microwave weapon? Our next report gets you these answers.
Who is the world's biggest peddler of fake news? No points for guessing. China first lied about the Wuhan virus. It lied about its origin and its spread. China also lied about the situation in Ladakh. It lied about the number of Chinese troops who died in the Galwan clash. Till date, Beijing continues to hide the real figures. But this has not stopped China from dishing out fresh lies about another attack in Ladakh, one which never really took place. A Chinese professor has claimed that China used microwave weapons against the Indian forces in Ladakh. The professor's name is Jin Kanrong. His story is about what he claims happened on the 29th of August 2020. And here are his rather absurd and absolutely false claims. Jin says the Chinese forces turned the mountaintops into a microwave oven. In 15 minutes, those occupying the hilltops all began to vomit. They couldn't stand up, so they fled. This was how we retook the ground. What ground? Fake news stories usually lack details, and this one is no exception. The Chinese fairy tale was reported by a British publication. The Indian army called out the fake news on Twitter. What Jin and China are jilted about is India's control of key heights in the strategically located areas of Rezangla and Rekhwenla. The question is, if Indian soldiers supposedly vomited and fled from these heights, how is it that they still control these mountaintops? The Indian army has a hawk-eye view of the Chinese positions at Pangong Tso, and this is why China is peddling fake news. Now, here is what really happened on the intervening night of August the 29th and 30th. China tried to occupy these strategic heights in the southern bank of Pangong Tso, but it failed. So it is now peddling a fabricated version of what happened. This is not the first time microwave weapons are being mentioned. Microwave weapons are nothing but electromagnetic weapons. They heat the water molecules under the skin in the same way as a microwave heats food. The rising temperature results in immense pain, which forces people to leave the area where the weapon is used. The United States once deployed a similar active Daniel system in Afghanistan. China has developed a similar weapon called Poly-WB1. It was unveiled at an air show in 2014. The fact is, no such microwave weapon has been used in Ladakh. But China is using its microwaves for cooking up more than just food. It is dishing out false stories straight out of the oven. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In 2008, the New Zealand police introduced the turban to its uniform. In 2020, it has introduced the hijab to its uniform. The hijab has been a subject of some very heated debates around the world. Leading European countries have banned its citizens from sporting the hijab in public. Which are these countries and why does New Zealand differ with them on this issue? Our next report examines.
Be able to identify the bodies as quickly as possible so that they can be released to the families and be laid to rest. But the Commissioner has stressed that he doesn't want to rush that.
March 2019, a white supremacist gunned down 50 people at 2 mosques in the city of Christchurch. The brutal attack shook New Zealand and the entire world. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern made it clear that her country's spirit of diversity and its secular values would not be shaken by the attack. The New Zealand police has now officially introduced hijab as a part of its uniform. Constable Zina Ali has become the first woman to sport a specially designed hijab with a full police uniform. A decision which 30-year-old Zina says will encourage other Muslim women to join the police force. The New Zealand police is winning praise for once again upholding diversity within its ranks. Yes, this is not the first time. In 2008, it had introduced the turban into its uniform. Constable Jagmohan Malhi became the first officer to wear it on duty. New Zealand is sending out a strong message, allowing all its citizens to fully embrace their religious identity. But globally, the policies on donning religious clothing, especially the hijab, differ France is home to the biggest Muslim population in Europe, but it was the first country to ban anyone from wearing the hijab. Forget police officials. In 2011, it passed a law which prohibited women from wearing a full-face veil in public. To this day, no French citizen is allowed to wear religious clothing or cover their face in public. In Austria, face veils have been banned since 2017. All Austrian citizens are required to show their facial features from chin to hairline. Failing to do so can lead to a fine of up to 150 euros. In Denmark, full-face veils have been illegal since 2018. People who break the law face fines up to 135 euros, which can increase for repeat offenders. In the Netherlands, the ban not only applies to veils and burqas, but also to full-face helmets and balaclavas. If you still decide to cover your face with a veil, you will be fined 150 euros. Several other countries are wrestling with the issue of the hijab, a debate which has been reignited following New Zealand's decision. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
With that, it's a wrap, leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.
After a lifetime of being the world's most famous enemies,
you can't count on